Take a slow breath in and let it out. Another slow breath in and out. If your mind is busy tonight, that's okay. You don't have to fix anything right now. You don't have to solve your whole life before sleep. Tonight, you only have one job: to soften, to settle, and to drift. And now, a quiet story. The story begins on the edge of a small coastal town where the roads turned narrow and the air tasted like salt and clean wind. There stood a lighthouse. It wasn't a famous lighthouse. It wasn't the tallest or the grandest or the newest. It was simply steady. The townspeople called it Harbor Light because it watched over the harbor like a gentle guardian, its beam turning slowly through the night, reminding every boat that the shore was near and that someone was awake with them. But the lighthouse had a secret. It was tired, not the kind of tired that came from hard work or long days. This was a deeper tired, like the tired of being the one who always stayed strong, because every night, Harbor Light shone. Every storm, Harbor Light stayed. Every season, every shifting wind, every crashing wave, Harbor Light held its place. And sometimes it wondered what it would feel like to rest inside the little lighthouse keeper's cottage. Tucked beside the tower lived a young woman named Elena. Elena had moved there recently, not because she had always dreamed of living by the sea, though she did love the sound of waves. Not because she had a grand plan. Elena came because she needed a quieter life. Her old life had been loud in ways she couldn't always explain. Loud with expectations, loud with rushing, loud with the feeling that she had to keep going, even when she had no softness left. When she arrived at the cottage, the first thing she noticed was the air. It felt open. It felt like space. And the second thing she noticed was Harbor Light. The lighthouse stood there like a thought that didn't need words, like a calm presence, like something that had learned how to last. Elena liked it immediately. That evening, she unpacked slowly. She didn't force herself to finish. She didn't push. She made a warm drink and sat near the window, watching the sky fade into deep blue. Soon, the lighthouse beam began its slow circle, a quiet sweep, a gentle turn. Elena watched it the way people watch a fire, not because it was exciting, but because it was soothing. She whispered, almost without thinking, "Thank you." And the lighthouse continued to shine. A storm arrives. A week later, the weather changed. The morning began with heavy clouds, thick and gray. The town felt smaller beneath them. The air was colder, sharper. By afternoon, the wind had risen. By evening, the sea grew restless, and waves slapped the rocks with impatient hands. Elena stood at the cottage window, arms wrapped around herself, watching the horizon dissolve into mist. The lighthouse light turned on, as it always did, a steady beam cutting through thickening air. And then the storm arrived. Rain came first, sudden and firm, then wind, stronger, louder, insistent. The cottage creaked softly, like an old friend adjusting in their chair. The trees bent, the ocean roared. Elena felt her chest tighten the way it used to tighten in her old life, not from the storm itself, but from the familiar feeling of bracing, like her body had learned that loudness meant danger, and calmness could be taken away at any moment. She tried to distract herself, tidying, making tea, folding blankets, but the storm kept insisting that she pay attention. So she did something simple. She put on her coat, stepped outside, and walked toward the lighthouse tower. Rain struck her cheeks like cold fingertips. Wind tugged at her sleeves, but the lighthouse, huge and still, made everything feel less frightening. She reached the heavy door, pushed it open, and stepped inside. Instant quiet, not silence. The storm still existed outside, but inside the tower it was softened. Elena climbed the spiral stairs slowly, one step at a time. The air smelled faintly of salt, metal, and old wood. At the top, near the lamp room, the lighthouse's great light hummed gently. Elena stood beside it, feeling warmth radiate through the glass. She found herself speaking again, softly, as if the lighthouse could understand. "You're always awake." The lighthouse beam continued its slow sweep. Elena swallowed. "I know what that feels like." Outside, the storm raged. Inside, Elena breathed, in and out. And as she stood there, something shifted. Not the weather, not the wind, something in her. She noticed that the lighthouse wasn't fighting the storm. It wasn't stiff. It wasn't tense. It was simply present. It was steady, not strained. Elena rested her hand lightly against the wall, feeling the cold stone. Then she whispered, like a promise, "I'm going to learn that. I'm going to learn steady without strained." The old keeper's note. The next morning, the storm had passed. The sky was pale and clean, rinsed by rain. The ocean calmed to a gentle roll. Sunlight spilled softly across the water. Elena walked outside and found the world shining in that fresh, quiet way it does after a storm, like everything had been reset. She decided to explore the cottage more thoroughly. The previous lighthouse keeper had left long ago, and the cottage held little signs of them. Small scuffs, old hooks, a shelf with a missing nail. In a drawer near the kitchen, Elena found something unexpected. A notebook. It was worn, its cover faded, its pages full of careful handwriting. At the top of the first page, it said, "Notes for the next keeper, if you ever feel tired." Elena's heart softened. She sat at the table, opened the notebook, and began to read. The handwriting was steady and kind. The lighthouse isn't strong because it never rests. It's strong because it knows its rhythm. It shines, and it turns, and it pauses between sweeps. Even light has a pattern. Even duty has breath. Elena read that sentence twice. Even duty has breath. She turned the page. On nights when the wind is loud, remember this. The lighthouse doesn't argue with the storm. It doesn't try to win. It simply keeps being itself. Another page. If you find yourself holding your breath, place your hand on the wall and breathe like the tide. In and out. In and out. Elena sat still for a long time, the notebook open before her. Then she smiled, small and real, because somehow the lighthouse keeper from the past had left her exactly what she needed: permission to be human. Elena learns the lighthouse rhythm. That evening, Elena created a ritual. Not a big one, not complicated, just a steady rhythm. Before sunset, she made a warm drink. She dimmed the lights. She opened the window slightly to let the sea air in. When the lighthouse beam turned on, Elena didn't just watch it. She breathed with it. As the beam swept to the right, she inhaled slowly. As it returned, she exhaled. In and out. The rhythm was not perfect. Sometimes she forgot. Sometimes her mind wandered. But every time she noticed, she returned to the light. And little by little, her body began to learn something new. That it didn't have to brace. That it could witness a storm without becoming one. That it could exist in the presence of loudness and still remain soft. The night the boats returned a month later, another storm threatened. Not as fierce as the first, but strong enough that the harbor grew cautious. Boats came in early. Fishermen tied ropes tighter. Windows were latched, candles checked. Elena walked to the lighthouse at dusk. As the wind rose, she climbed the stairs and checked the lamp room like she'd been trained to do. Everything looked right. The light, strong and bright, ready for its nightly work. Elena looked out toward the water and saw something that made her pause. A small boat, farther out than it should be, moving slowly through darkening waves. The boat's navigation lights blinked weakly. Elena's stomach tightened, but this time she didn't spiral. She didn't collapse into panic. She breathed. In and out. She watched the lighthouse beam sweep over the water. The beam found the boat, washed it in light, and moved on, then returned again, steady. Elena felt something in her chest loosen. The lighthouse wasn't frantic. It wasn't hurried. It was reliable. And the boat, seeing the light, turned gradually toward the harbor. One slow correction, then another. The storm did not disappear, but the boat found its path, and Elena understood something gentle and powerful. Sometimes we don't need life to be calm. We only need a steady light to come back to. The boat made it safely to shore. Later, when the winds quieted, Elena descended the spiral stairs and stepped outside. The lighthouse stood behind her, tall and calm. Elena placed her hand against the cool stone again. "Thank you," she whispered. And then, because she had learned a new truth, she added, "And thank you for teaching me how to breathe." Drift section, extra slow, extra calming. That night, Elena lay in bed with the window cracked. The sea made its low, endless hush. Like a lullaby the earth had been singing forever. She listened to the lighthouse beam moving outside. Faint light slipping across the room every few seconds. Her body felt heavy in the best way. Safe. Allowed. She thought about how she used to live. Always tense, always holding her breath. And she remembered the notebook words. Even duty has breath. Elena placed one hand on her chest, one on her stomach. In and out. She imagined her thoughts like boats. They could float by. They didn't need to dock. In and out. She imagined her worries like weather. They could pass. They didn't need to become her. In and out. And slowly, in the quiet rhythm of the sea and the turning light, Elena drifted toward sleep. Not because everything was perfect, not because she had fixed her whole life, but because she had found something steadier than fear. A rhythm, a breath, a gentle returning. And in the distance the lighthouse kept shining, not strained, not fighting, simply being itself, steady, soft, alive, and safe.